Hello everybody, it's about 92K Nightmare. Welcome back to Umineko. I believe I am thoroughly recovered from Danganronpa's trial. That was a fucked up trial. Anyway, on to this. So, in the last episode, well, at the end there, Beatrice pretty much revealed herself to pretty much the siblings. So that makes me wonder how events are definitely going to play out. And for some reason, I admit it, I'm definitely excited, but extremely hesitant. Anyway, let's jump right back in. The second day, October 5th, 1986. What was the sound that always filled the ears? The sound of the rain? The sound of a waterfall? Or was it radio static? In that case, I want it to be the sound of blood flowing through the body. I want it to be the sound of the blood circulating throughout my body, telling me that I am still alive. We're going through Kinzo's perspective now? That one. Try this one last time.
Asa nanoka.
The light entering through a crack in the curtain was faint, but it at least told him that dawn had broken. Kinzo, still acting like one who has just woken up, still sitting in a chair and looking up at the ceiling, felt the blood slowly travel throughout his body. Judging by the clock, it was early morning, 6 on the dot. No matter how tired he was, no matter how deeply he slept, he woke up at exactly this time, as though he had measured it with an hourglass. Dude, I have the same problem. I wake up at like 6 in the morning all the time, regardless of my freaking alarm. He didn't think that something like this would lead him to boast, but he instructed himself that while he could still do something like this, he was still in robust health.
朝を迎えたという？どうやら最初の生贄は逃れたということらしい。ルーレットの目が幸運だったのか、我が努力の賜物なのか。区別のつかぬところがなんとももどかしいが、それは言うまい。
Kinzo was very slightly driven by a temptation to see the outside of the study door, because he had thought that maybe he might find the traces of a vain struggle to break the door, made by something trying to select him as one of the first 6 sacrifices.
人間とは安っぽい生き物だな。
Ain't that the truth?
人事を尽くして天命を待ちながら幸運を得られた時にはそれが単なる幸運ではなく己の技量によるものだったとうぬぼれたくもなる。
So he wanted to check whether there was a wretched mark on the door. That's what humans would do. Therefore, Kinzo did not check. He repressed things that he wanted to do because he was human. By that, Kinzo could be immersed in a feeling of sufficiency, as though he himself had become a being that surpassed humans. He became aware of human desire and forbade it. Things that a human wanted to do, he resisted. This eccentricity and rebellious sense had surely given him a rare genius, which must have allowed him to succeed in his exploits as he revived the Ushidamiya family in 1 generation.
さて、ベアトリーチ。お前が取った6つの駒は何なのか。そして次なる手はどう来るのか。楽しませてもらうぞ。私の守りは完璧だ。前回のような無様はさらさぬぞ。
Like last time? Wait a minute. I will not shame myself like last time. That gives me the thought that he was aware of the first chapter's events. But how could that be? I might be thinking of it wrong, but... The servants woke early. They had to open up the curtains, prepare breakfast, and complete various other tasks to welcome the guests to a new day. Goda was the most enthusiastic. During the family conference, he had been told to especially concentrate his efforts on cooking. And he had been specially exempted from several tasks that servants normally must do. It seemed that Goda, who was a show-off, had a particular feeling of supremacy about that. He left the preparations of the inside of the mansion to Genji and the rest, and worked on preparing breakfast in the kitchen. Genji split the work with Shannon and Kanon, and they carried out various tasks. Shannon headed to the dining hall and knocked. Last year, the family conference had continued into the early hours of the morning. It wouldn't have been odd for this year's conference to continue until the early morning. Considering the possibility that they were still having a discussion inside, she knocked. But there was no response, so she opened the door and said good morning. Was she going to come across a big bloody scene?
おはようございます。いらっしゃいませんか?
The room was cold, and it seemed that the conference had ended a long time before. On top of the table, there was a tea set, from which they had been drinking, arranged in a way that would make it easy to clean them up. Cleaning up the tea was a servant's job, so if the family was too caring and cleaned it up themselves, the servants would lose face. Therefore, just doing this much for the servants truly was a pleasing act of kindness. As she approached the table to clean it, she noticed something like a memo that had been left with the utensils. It had been placed together with the tea set. So naturally thinking it was a memo for the servant cleaning up, Shannon took it. Written on it was not a request, nor was it thanks for preparing the tea. There was just a single word. Shannon looked at it blankly and read it out loud.
礼拝堂.
Chapel? Wait, was that where Beatrice with the siblings were? It kind of did have like a church feeling sort of look to it. A small sound kept repeating over and over. It was a sound that was normally worthless and boring. If only I could stop hearing it soon, then I could quickly return to my doze, someone thought vaguely. But no matter how much time passed, the sound did not end. It repeated over and over. Shut up. Who is it? Banging on the door the whole time. As soon as she noticed that, she woke up. Someone was knocking. Then she noticed that there wasn't just a knock, but a voice.
Rosa-sama. Rosa-sama. Ohayou gozaimasu.
待って、今行きます。
Wait, Rosa's okay? Oh, thank goodness. I mean, kind of thank goodness, but... It had been Genji's voice. Looking at the clock, it was still before 7. It was clearly too early to wake the guests. Did something happen that was bad enough to cause this? She felt her sleepiness increasingly fade thanks to this premonition of misfortune. Oh boy, I wonder if Golden Slaughter is going to play. I love that song. Good lord. Because Genji had been a familiar servant to Rosa since her childhood days, even though she was slightly defenseless in her pajamas, she opened the door a crack and answered. Is it going to show Rosa in her pajamas?
早朝から申し訳ございません。
何かあったの?
はい。実は礼拝堂に。
Uh-oh. Did I call it? Genji spoke into Rosa's ear and told her something in a small voice. For a second, it seemed that Rosa couldn't understand what she had been told. And after having it repeated several times, she realized that apparently something strange had happened. Rosa closed her door for a second, and after changing her clothes, she immediately accompanied Genji, and they headed to the mansion. Oh, good lord, is there going to be a CG showing the bodies this time? Like, half of me is, like, excited, like, oh my god, we get to see detail, and then the other half of me is like, oh shit, we might get to see detail. The chapel requires some explanation. It wasn't in the mansion, but in a grove behind the mansion, which could be reached after a short walk. See, I don't remember them ever mentioning a chapel in the first chapter. I don't remember them ever mentioning that. It had been built at the same time that the mansion had been constructed on Rokunjima. So while its outside walls have been repaired many times, making it look new from the outside, it was a very old building. Rosa dashed through the rain along with Genji. Just like the previous night, the rain was falling in earnest. Eventually, they began to see the chapel beyond the thin grove. Because they could only see it from the outside, it felt like a place of dazzling beauty, where a pair of young lovers might want to hold a ceremony. However, it seemed that in Kinzo's eyes, this was a very sacred place. So Rosa and her siblings had been harshly told not to approach it unnecessarily. So even though they had grown up, they would feel some guilt if they approached the chapel, no matter what the reason, and felt some fear, as though their father would get angry and hit them in the face. The servant silhouettes could be seen in front of the entrance to the chapel. Goda, Shannon, and Cannon, which meant that all the servants in the morning shift had gathered. A short while ago, Genji had spoken to Rosa, telling her what the situation was. However, without laying eyes on it directly, she really hadn't been able to understand it. Probably all the servants gathered there were the same. Without seeing with their own eyes, they couldn't understand what was going on. What, is there a magic there? The magic symbol! There it is! On the door at the entrance to the chapel was something very large, drawn with a creepy, stringy paint that made one think of blood. Something like a creepy magic circle.
何よこれいつ書かれたの
The servants looked at each other. Goda was the first one to open his mouth.
申し訳ございません。普段はここへは立ち入りませんもので、いつ書かれたのかはわかりません。
じゃあ最初に見つけたのは誰？はい、私です。食堂へお茶の道具の片付けに行きましたら、礼拝堂と書かれたメモがあったもので。
Okay, why did it skip that? I didn't click anything. I must have accidentally clicked it. Shannon held the memo with a shaking hand.
誰の字？兄さんや姉さんの字ではないわね。それであなたはここへ来てこれを見つけたのね。はい。ローザ様、これを。
Look at what?
何？ハッピーハロウィン。
Happy Halloween for... Cannon pointed at a single line of English written below the creepy magic circle. Until it had been pointed out to her, she had thought it was just another part of the magic circle and hadn't noticed it. There, words were written in English. Happy Halloween for Maria. Happy Halloween for Maria. This creepy magic circle for Maria. Happy Halloween. Yesterday, the only person who had said Happy Halloween to Maria, this symbol matched. The Golden Witch, Beatrice.
マリアは？あの子、いとこたちと一緒に寝てるはずよね。確認した？
申し訳ございません。マリア様のお名前が書かれていたことにはまだ確認しておりません。至急。
何やってんのよ。私はマリアの様子を見てきます。それからクラウス兄さんたちにも知らせて、以後の対応の指示を受けて。
I bet you you're dead. After saying that much, Rosa finally noticed a feeling of discomfort. Her own rank of this family conference was the lowest of the four siblings. Why was she the only one called in an abnormal situation like this, when the other siblings hadn't been called? Even if Maria's name had popped up.
はい。旦那様にご連絡申し上げようとしたのですが、お姿が見当たらず。
奥様もお部屋におられません。
And we know she's been selected.
シーツの様子からすると、昨べはベッドに戻られていないのかもしれません。
Rosa felt something creepy crawling slowly up her back.
礼拝堂の中、確認して。いえ、まだです。
確認しようとしたのですか？
実は礼拝堂の鍵は特別で、マスター1本だけある鍵でしか開けられないのですが、その鍵がキーボックスから紛失しているのです。
She didn't want to get closer to the door with the creepy magic circle if she could. Rosa readied herself and approached, and tried pushing and pulling the knob. All she felt was the resistance of the sturdy lock.
入れる窓などがないか探してはみたのですが、もし中を確認するのでしたら窓を破らなければならないかと思います。いかがいたしましょう？
そんな許可私に出せるわけがないわ。お父様の大切な礼拝堂なのよ。そんなことできないわよ。
At that time, the events of the previous day swirled around in the back of Rosa's mind. That's right. When I met that witch in the rose garden, didn't she hand Maria an envelope? That's right. There was no mistake. She had handed it over. When Maria tried to open it, that witch told her not to open it yet. Then she surely said, "The time to open that will come soon." Rosa was sure. There could be no mistake. That letter which had been handed to Maria. I'm going back to the guest house, I assume? Oh, holy shit, she ran all the way. After dashing back to the guest house, Rosa approached the cousin's room while hiding her footsteps, softly opened the door, and peered inside. From the inside, she could hear the healthy snores of young people. There were 4 children, and Maria was there, sleeping soundly. After feeling relieved, she entered the room with quiet footsteps. She was after Maria's handbag, which was resting on the sofa. Maria always liked walking around with her treasures. She was probably imitating how her mother always carried her makeup with her. Of course, she was just copying her, so on the inside it was full of junk. In Maria's case, it was full of small, creepy occult-like items, and a notebook with things like that written on it. Rosa hadn't been happy once to see her daughter walking around with those kinds of things, which were not girlish. However, after she tried to force Maria to stop, they had gotten into a big fight, and she had decided to let it be. I'm imagining this creepy scenario where Maria just kind of wakes up like, "Mama, you shouldn't touch that." A western envelope with the crest of the gold eagle. When she tried to take it out, she realized that there was a heavy cylindrical object inside. She could tell by its feeling its weight. There was no doubt. This was the key. After turning around and checking that Maria was still sound asleep, Rosa tore open the envelope, and the contents spilled out into her palm. Whoa, it's a golden key. I think it's gold. Yeah, it's gold. It was a key with an old and intricate design. Rosa grasped that key and dashed out. It seemed that Battler noticed that sound, but after grumbling and turning over in his sleep, he started snoring again.
Genji-san, この鍵、ひょっとして礼拝堂の鍵ということは？
これをどこで？はい。これが礼拝堂の鍵です。
Rosa approached the creepy magic circle once again and put the key in the keyhole. There was a strong resistance. After it resisted for a short while, it stopped resisting with a clunk. Then, squeaking with a noise that hurt one's ears, it slowly began to open. Okay.
誰かいるの？
Her voice reverberated throughout the massive room. Of course, there was no answer. The chapel had a high ceiling and the air was cold. And even on this rainy, unsettling day, for some reason, it felt sacred. The servants timidly followed after Rosa.
Rosa-sama, あれを。
Canon noticed it immediately and pointed. Over there was the altar. In the place where normally a pastor would preach of God's love, there was a table that shouldn't have been there. At first, it looked like a dining table. There actually were gorgeous plates and utensils set on the table, enough to make you think it was a child's birthday party or something. Upon closer inspection, the surrounding area had been decorated with pumpkins and black and orange ribbons. They were probably Halloween decorations. And there were people seated at the table. 3 people on each side facing each other, seated in chairs. They could be recognized at a glance. Kraus and his wife, Ava and her husband, and Rudolph and his wife. But if someone told you that, you'd still have to go even closer and check. Because they seemed almost like dolls. Rosa and the rest had opened the door, entered all at once with the sound of many footsteps, and called out, asking if anyone was there. And yet, there had been no reaction. Even if Rosa and the rest assumed that they were being ignored, normally you'd expect there to be some kind of reaction. And there hadn't been even that. So at first, it felt like someone had set down some dolls that looked a lot like them. By now, it wasn't just Rosa, Shannon and Cannon, and even Goda. They were all fighting frantically with the creepy emotion that grasped their hearts.
兄さん、Aさん。
As she climbed up to the altar, she called out again, but still, the others gave no reaction. Yes, by now Rosa had accepted it. They were not dolls. She accepted that they were those very people.
これは。
They neared the distance at which they would be able to clearly see what was on the table. Just like their first impression, it looked like a lovely banquet, reminiscent of a child's birthday party. Plates piled up with sweets, glasses with lovely drinks, several ornaments in the shape of pumpkins. They were all decorated in a Halloween style, and while it might have been pointless to imagine at a time like this, she thought that this would surely have made Maria happy if she could see it. In front of that table, they were seated, and looked like they were sleeping. It was an eerie scene, as though a small, fun-looking Halloween party had been stopped in time.
兄さんたち、寝てるの？
When she approached even closer to them, she realized that candies were scattered all over the floor. They were all candies, cookies, sodas, and chocolates, with very fantasy-styled wrappings. And they were all distributed across the carpet, which was covered with blackberry and cranberry jam. No. Rosa and the rest finally realized what the situation was. It was a Halloween party. A banquet for those not of this world. Kraus, Natsuhi, Ava, Hideyoshi, Rudolph, and Kitty, 6 people in all, were seated in the chairs, dead as though they were sleeping. How could you tell that they were dead and not simply sleeping? That was because they were vertically sliced open from their chests to their stomachs. That is fucked up. Very... That's fucked up. 6 of them were seated at a Halloween party. All of them had with their stomachs sliced open. All of them had been killed. Was the jam that covered the floor something that they couldn't finish eating? Which had overflowed out of their stomachs? No. The contents of their stomachs had been thrown out across the floor. And that wasn't all. From their stomachs, almost as though they had poured out sweets. Candies and cookies, soda and chocolates had poured out, stained with blood, and had scattered across the floor. What could have happened to cause this? It was almost as though the insides of their stomachs had been stuffed full of sweets, and when their stomachs had been cut, it had all flowed out. Rosa remembered a shocking meal, a turkey that had been served at her own birthday party. When it had been cut with a knife, from the inside, things she loved, but which she had not heard about at all. Bright red. Ketchup omelet rice had poured out like blood-stained maggots. It's trippy, slimy, pulpy, sticky. The trauma of her youth was revived. Rosa felt a monster raging inside her stomach as the acid started to rise up. Unable to hold back, she threw up on the floor. Her empty stomach couldn't throw up anything but stomach acid. This scene in front of her was no longer a fun Halloween party. The three couples had been placed there, with their stomachs vertically drenched open with many sweets had been stuffed in there. Pulpy, squishy. Blood and guts and sweets were overflowing onto the floor. Blood-stained, sticky, sloppy, pulpy, sweet candy stuck to each finger. Gummy. But stained with their entrails, sloppy, pulpy. What was that I stepped on just now? It didn't feel like a candy, or a cookie, or soda, or a chocolate. I'm scared. What did I step on? I can't even look at the bottom of my foot. The gruesome Halloween party. From far away, it looked really beautiful, fantastical, and fun. And when you see it up close, it's really terrible, disgusting, and somehow beautiful. Rosa's wild thoughts tried as best as they could to escape her throat with a loud voice that was neither a scream nor roar. If a word tied to reality, like police, hadn't come out of Gota's mouth, Rosa and the rest would probably still be unable to escape this nightmarish party. But that wasn't because they thought that the police might be able to do something. If they didn't say police out loud, it seemed that another seat would be set up at this demon's party and given to them. It felt like their own stomachs were getting uncomfortably filled from the inside. Like churning. It was surely because candy was starting to overflow from their stomachs. Rosa was again tortured by a desire to vomit and threw up her stomach acid on the floor. And then she searched to see whether there was any candy mixed in. Rosa coughed violently again, and violently spat up the stomach acid that burned her throat. She realized that by now, her whole body had been covered in filthy sweat.
源氏さんとシャノンちゃん、お父様に連絡して指示を仰いでちょうだい。郷田さんはカノン君と一緒に行って警察に電話を。あと、南條先生に来てもらう。
Why even bring Dr. Nanjo? It's way too late for medical care. Servants accepted their orders and dashed outside. After watching them leave, Rosa once again fixedly cast her eyes upon those fantastical deaths of her siblings and their partners with a mixture of pleasure and pain. Even though there could be nothing more tragic, for some reason she wanted to describe it as beautiful. Why? That's fucked up. Like, that is legit fucked up. I mean, smashing someone's face to where it's almost unrecognizable is one thing. But good lord. I'm kind of glad it didn't show that. But I imagine it did show that in the manga. And I saw the manga pic that one of you guys sent me. I kind of showed how detailed the facial reconstruction was. Oh, good lord, if it's that bad, I can't wait to see if they actually went into detail about how the stomachs looked. Ugh, that's vomit-inducing. Probably should put up a disclaimer. Make sure you haven't eaten dinner yet. Or if you have eaten dinner, sorry.
どこに行っちまったんだろうな。
使用人室も厨房も空っぽだぜ。一体どうしちまったってんだ。
I bet she's crying about the letter. Oh, never mind. Oh, there it is. 弱ったね。バトラ君、本当にローザおばさんだったのかい？
まあ、俺も寝ぼけてたから、明け方にローザおばさんが入ってきて、マリアの手提げカバンを漁ってるような気がしたんだよ。俺はてっきり、マリアの手提げに、歯磨きのチューブでも入ってるんじゃないかなんて思って、寝ぼけてて。
なんで歯磨きのチューブがマリアの手提げに入ってるんだよ。
Well, you don't carry a tube of toothpaste around with you just in case? You never know when you need to go clean your teeth.
寝ぼけて夢でも見たに決まってんぜ。
Balor vaguely remembered Rosa entering the cousin's room, and Maria, who had woken up first, had started rampaging around, saying that someone had opened an envelope that she'd been keeping safe. And then they decided that Rosa had come and opened the envelope.
黄金の魔女様の封筒か。中に何が入ってたんだろ
う。わからないね。でも、あの封筒は、おじい様が新書に使う、後ろ宮家の家紋の入ったものだった。親族会議と無関係なものが入っていたとは考えがたいね。
She hadn't let anyone touch it, but yesterday Maria had bragged a lot about the envelope to Battler and the rest. So they remembered it well. She cries quite a lot.
ジョージの兄貴の言う通りなら、相当重要なものらしいが、しかし、そんな大事なものを、どうして魔女様はマリアに渡したんだろう。さっぱりだぜ。
Every once in a while, the refreshing morning atmosphere was completely wiped out by the sound of thunder. It was only natural. Since the time they had woken up, they hadn't met anyone other than themselves. It felt like It felt like only they were left, and the mansion had become an empty husk.
おーい！誰かいないか？返事してくれよ！
After Jessica called out into the hallway, eventually an answer came back. It was from the entrance hall.
聞こえますとも。何かありましたか？
Nanjo?
南條先生だ。よかった。この島から僕たち以外が消えてしまったわけではないようだよ。
南條先生、おはようございます。すみませんが、うちの親たちとかどこに行ったか知りませんか？
はて、私も今起きてこちらに来たばかりですからな。わかりかねますが、さて。
It was only natural. Nanjo was a guest like the rest of them. He had just now come to pass the time in the parlor until breakfast.
南條先生、ママが通った。ママがマリアのお手紙通ったの。返して返して。
Good lord. Maria buried her face in Nanjo's Yes, his stomach is very well built. Maria buried her face in Nanjo's well-built stomach, sobbing and crying. Nanjo could do nothing but bewildered at what was going on so early in the morning.
誰かかけてくるぜ。ジェシカ、誰か来るぞ。
From down the hall, they could sense people running hurriedly. When they looked, they saw that it was Goda and Cannon. Running inside the mansion should have been immodest for a servant, and yet Battler and the rest didn't even think to question that now. Maria's sobbing had become so unmanageable they wanted to ask anyone, where Rosa was. But the two servants ignored Jessica as she waved her hand. Goda flew into the servant room, and after Cannon noticed that Nanjo was there, he bowed and approached Nanjo at a quick pace, whispering something into his ear.
何ですって？ローザさんが。
はい、ご案内いたしますので、どうか。
わかりました。
こちらへ。
Without saying anything more than that, Cannon finally noticed Jessica and bowed to her. But he wasn't calmed. He dashed back down the corridor by which he had come, followed by Nanjo. By looking at how hurriedly they were, Battler and the rest realized that yes, something bad really had happened. They saw Goda through the door to the servant room, which had been flung open. He was holding the receiver and violently pressing the hook. From that, they realized that he was trying to call the hospital or the police. In any event, he was trying to call someone because a serious emergency had occurred.
行ってみようぜ。
Oh, nope.
マリアの手紙返して。それは黄金鏡への招待状なの。
They didn't know what, but something was happening. Battler and the rest chased after Cannon and Nanjo. Then we realized Cannon-kun had called Dr. Nanjo, but he hadn't called us, so he shouldn't have gone with them. I'm guessing that this is Battler's perspective. I wonder if Alice didn't regret her excess curiosity when she chased after that rabbit holding a clock.
Ooh, this is going to be fun.
By fun, it's gonna be tragic as hell.
ダメよ入っちゃダメ見ちゃダメジェシカちゃんダメ
Time for the screams. Ugh. That scream just gave chills down my spine. How? Oh God.
母さん父さん何があったのなんだよこりゃ趣味が悪いにも程があるじゃねえかよ命を奪うならそれで十分事足りただろうがよなんだよこりゃわざわざ殺した後に椅子に座らせて腹裂いて菓子をわざわざ中に詰め込んだってのかよなんだってそんな悪趣味なことをしやがるんだよチキショウやってくれやがるぜ最高だよ
皆さんは外へ出られた方がいいこんな姿を皆さんに見せたいなどと彼らが思うわけがありません
Nanjo told the children to go outside, but no one listened.
ローザさん皆さんに言ってくださいこんなもの見つけては毒になる
Rosa regretted her own rashness. She should have realized that the children would eventually come here. She should have quickly locked it instead of standing around. So the children had come. They had seen it. Surely in this very moment they were having a sight burned into their eyes, which was far more grotesque than the shocking meal Rosa had seen in her youth. While she hugged Marie as though she had forgotten her shock at the horrible scene, Rosa cried for them and their parents. The four groaning and crying voices, their sadness, continued to echo in a place which should have known God's love.
クソ野郎が
Huh?
またかよまたこんな殺人をしかも今度もやたらと凝った最高にふざけた殺し方をしやがって
わらわはそんな嘆きより感謝の言葉が聞きたかったぞ
感謝と言ったかこのクソババアてめえ耳がいかれてやがるってんなら俺が両の耳を引き裂いてよく聞こえるようにしてやるぜなんで俺がこの最高にいかれた殺し方にありがとうございますベアトリーチェ様なんて言わなければならねえんだ
前回のゲームで
Oh God, that face! Holy shit! Okay, that face is different. Good lord! Oh my God, that is. Ugh.
お前は自分の親の死に顔が見られないと嘆いたなだから残したぞしっかり残したよく拝んでおけ間違いなく父親たちが殺されたことを
そうかよそいつはサービス満タンだぜ君
I swear if I took the life out of you, I'd plow your face. But I'll take that back. I'll drag out your guts.
感情に任せて
Oh God, it got worse.
すでにわらわのゲームは始まっておるのだぞ
Ooh.
わらわは今回は綺麗に死体を残すことに決めたなぜだかわかるか前回のゲームでそなたがわらわの存在を否定するときこう考えて否定したである顔面が潰され遺体の身元が確認できるだから身代わりの死体を用意してアリバイを作った可能性が否定できる、
その可能性が排除できない限り人間犯人説は維持できる。
なんだと
さあバトラー、南條に検視を任せてよいのか。ミステリーの古典では検視の医者がグルというのが伝統なのだろう。なら南條に検視を任せるな。そなたが自らするがよい。間違いなく6人の死体が当人で、死んだふりなどでなく本当に死んでいることを十分に確認するがいい。お前の父親が母親が腹を裂かれて臓物を引きずり出されて殺されていることを。
That just makes my own stomach hurt reading that, or even hearing that.
腹に手を入れてその手触りで確認するがいい。
God, that is sick.
泣かねえ。ちくしょうちくしょう、泣かねえぞ俺は。
Battler suddenly yelled. His tears were still dripping down, but as though scolding himself for being girly, he slapped his face hard several times with both hands. Even so, the tears still wouldn't stop. However, he felt a hot blaze on both of his eyes.
これだけの上等を決めやがった野郎に借はがっちり返させていただくぜ。なら泣く時じゃねえ。自分のすべきことを考えろ。ああ、ダメだぜ、全然ダメだ。涙を流す暇があったら考えろ。類線なんかひるませる時じゃねえ。
Rather than genuine hatred, maybe it was more of an evasive hatred to blot out his sadness. However, it gave a little courage to George and Jessica, who had been crushed by sadness.
そうだね。僕たちの内部に起こってしまった現実は変わらない。
じゃあどうすりゃいいんだ。私は父さんと母さんのために何をすればいいんだよ。
ローザ様、戻りました。
郷田さん、警察はどうでしたか。対応の指示はいつ頃来られそうだと言っていましたか。
Typhoon has destroyed the production.
それが電話が故障のようでして、非常用の無線機も試してはみたのですが、その天候のせいでしょうか、こちらも通じず。
なんですって。じゃあ警察に連絡がつかないということなの。あいつだ。あいつが電話線とかに細工して警察に電話ができないようにしたんだ。
When she heard that the phones had broken down, Jessica immediately decided that it was the work of that mysterious guest. Her eyes were bright red after so much crying, and they began to grow even more red with rage.
もうキロの余地なんかねえぜ。全てが分かってる。そうだと分かる。父さんと母さんを殺したのは誰だ。決まってるぜ、あいつだ。昨日来たとかいう魔女様に決まってる。襟首ひねり上げてやるぜ。チクショーチクショーチクショー。ジェシカちゃん、お待ちなさい。郷田さん、カノ君行って。
お嬢様、お待ちを。
Covering her sadness that had nowhere to go with anger, Jessica ran outside, torn apart by emotion. Thinking about it hastily, maybe the mystery guest Beatrice, who had arrived yesterday, was suspicious. However, at the current time, there was absolutely no proof that she was the culprit. At this moment, she was nothing more than a simple guest. So Rosa made an adult decision and had to stop Jessica in her hasty rampage. Goda and Cannon realized it immediately and chased after her.
誰にも招かれなかった客人、ベアトリーチェが犯人なんだろうか。
ジェシカの気持ちもわかる。そう思い込みたい気持ちは誰でもいいから犯人ってことにして横っ面をぶっ飛ばしてやりたい気持ちがある。だがその前にはっきりと理解する必要がある。ベアトリーチェって何者なんだ。俺は顔すら見てねえぜ。
Of course she's laughing.
青ならお屋敷に大きな肖像画で飾られてたよ。あれだけ見てまだ覚えられないのかな。
なんだよマリア、こんな状況で何がおかしいよ。
ベアトリーチェは魔女なんだよ。そして黄金鏡の扉を開くための儀式がいよいよ始まったの。この6人はその生贄なんだよ。さあさあ始まるよ、魔女の宴が。
マリア、その気持ち悪い声で笑うのをやめなさいっていつも言ってるでしょ。
The crisp sound of Rosa slapping Maria's cheek echoed through the high-ceilinged chapel. Kind of felt like since it had started raining yesterday. Since the island had been wrapped up in the typhoon, something had gone crazy. I had arrived in Rokanjima while it was clear, and taken a nap because I had gotten up early. When I woke up, it had already started raining, and since that time, suddenly, a mysterious visitor had arrived, calling herself the Golden Witch Beatrice, and it felt like I was sinking bit by bit into an insane world. That something happened that I already said. During that time, had this island been cut off, trapped in a different world where common sense didn't apply? Who is this person called Beatrice? Was some unknown person trying to involve themselves in the inheritance problem, like our parents were freaking out about at dinner last night? Or was this witch from the Legend of the Golden culprit, like Maria said? Even if Jessica hadn't let her short temper get the better of her, in this situation, that visitor was probably the most suspicious. However, we couldn't decide just like that. It's useless, it's all useless! I smacked my face with both hands and cooling off my brain before they got too hot. Even though it might have been a wasted effort.
これはおじい様の封筒。
Oh goody. On a tray piled up with sweets that decorated the table, George Aniki found a Western envelope which had the Ushidamiya family crest done on it in gold leaf. And it was unopened.
ってことは、それは俺たち宛てってことじゃねえのか。親父たちが読んだものだったなら開封されてるはずだぜ。
その推理は正解のようだよ。書いてある。残されし者たちへ。書いてある。
To those who remain.
それは犯人が残した手紙なの。中身。
兄貴、開けようぜ。
After nodding silently, George Aniki opened. A folded letter came out.
読むよ。六軒島へようこそ。後ろ宮家の皆様方。私は金蔵様にお仕えしております当家顧問錬金術師のベアトリーチェと申します。
That letter really was a joke. This Beatrice, who called herself the family alchemist, had announced that she was collecting the gold she had lent grandfather, along with the interest. And that interest was everything that grandfather had created. Since this tragedy was right before our eyes as this paragraph was read aloud, it clearly wasn't referring to just to the wealth that grandfather had built up. It was literal. Everything that grandfather had created. In other words, all of grandfather's descendants were included in the interest.
ふざけやがって、なんてめちゃくちゃな契約だ。黄金の利子は命だってのかよ。そんなのまるで悪魔の契約じゃねえかよ。それで魔女気取りってわけか。なせやがるぜ。
特別条項。ただし隠された契約の黄金を暴いた者が現れた時に黄金の隠し場所についてはすでに金蔵様が私の肖像画の下に碑文にて公示されております。つまりこういうことなんだ。もしこの殺人が利子の回収行為だというならそれを止める条件としておじい様に与えた隠し黄金を探し出してみるとそしてその秘密は例の肖像画の碑文に隠されているとも言ってる。
つまりこいつは魔女様の挑戦状ってわけか。
Yep.
黄金の隠し場所を記した暗号文を解けるものなら解いてみろと。そしてそれができなきゃ
利子の回収をこの後も着々と進めていきますと、ぶっ殺してやる。上等だ。
バトラ君、これ。
What? The table had been full of sweets. So even though it had been right in the open, we had assumed it was a sweet. I mean, come on. You find stuff like this a lot, right? Come on. It might have been a box shaped like a gold ingot, filled with chocolate.
こりゃお菓子の箱じゃねえぞ。本物だ。こりゃ本物の金塊だ。
片翼のわしの紋章が刻印されてる。前に母さんが話してたのを聞いた。これはおじいさまの黄金伝説の金塊だよ。
A gold ingot weighing a full 10 kilograms. 3 of them were piled up in the very center of the table. It was where a cake would be placed if it was a birthday party. In other words, this was without a doubt the birthday cake of the party known as the family conference.
これが本当に純度49のインゴットだったなら6000万円くらいの価値はある。
バカ、安すぎる。俺たちの親が6人も殺されて、そこに積まれた黄金がたったの6000万円だと。バカにするんじゃねえ。
さあ始まったね、ベアト。どうせこの謎は誰にも解けないよ。だから絶対にベアトの勝ち。早く黄金鏡への扉を開いて、そしてマリアを連れてって。
Jesus Christ. Huh. Time didn't shift.
お嬢様、どうか気をお静めください。
If this is gonna be a moment between Canon and Jessica, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I really want to see it. I'm not. Fuck it. I'm not ending the episode. I don't need to. I just really. It's not even an hour, so we can basically go ahead and just kind of see this.
誰が犯人かはまだわかりませんぞ。それにベアトリーチェ様は親方様の大切な賓客です。
だからなんだってんだ。本人の胸ぐらひねり上げてやれば白状するに決まってるぜ。
Somehow I highly doubt that.
目を見ればわかるんだよ。私が見破ってやる。何が魔女だ、ベアトリーチェだ。化けの皮を剥いでやる。
Jessica never stopped moving. Goda and Canon chased after her, doing their best to convince her, but Jessica never lent them an ear. Okay, obviously this wasn't going to be a Canon Jessica moment, but I don't know. Eventually, the witch's VIP room came into view. And I'm not going to leave it on this hell of a freaking cliffhanger. Even though I've done worse, but... This VIP room was always sealed and never used. No matter what kind of guest came, Kinzo wouldn't let them in this room. And yet the servants were always made to clean this room, so that it could be used at any time. So the servants started calling this room the witch's VIP room, after the other shapeless master. Jessica also knew this, and she couldn't forgive the arrogance of the one who called herself a witch and stayed in that room. The Golden Witch was just a fairy tale. Come on, a witch? To Jessica, she was nothing more or less than the murderer who had brutally killed her parents. Question them, make them give painful excuses, spit it out painfully, breathe painfully. No matter how hard she pretends to be a witch, I'll teach her that she's just a stinking, sweaty human. As Jessica yelled with all of her strength, she hit the door to the VIP room. It definitely wasn't a knock. That sound was the beating of her anger's hammer, as though she was saying that if they didn't open the door, she'd break it down. There was no answer. Jessica grabbed the doorknob without any reservation, but she felt the resistance of the lock. Jessica turned around to look at the two servants and spoke.
マスターキーで開くんでしょ。開けて。
お嬢様、それは大変な失礼に当たります。
Although Goda was flustered, he still tried to somehow calm Jessica's anger. After hanging his head silently for a while, Kennen pulled a master key from his jacket pocket.
カノンさん、いいんですか？
もしおられたなら無礼になるのは承知です。それにもしベアトリーチェ様が何の関係もないというなら、それを僕たちに釈明して納得させればいい。
そうだぜ、その通りだ。借りるぜ。
Jessica snatched the master key from Kennen's hand and violently shoved it into the keyhole. Immediately there was a light sound and she felt the lock open. And without excusing herself, she flung open the door.
ベアトリーチェ！どこだ？出てこい！
Jessica rudely stepped into the room. The witch wasn't anywhere to be seen.
そんなねえ、いねえぜ。どこ行きやがった？
Jessica, thinking that she might be hiding somewhere inside the room, peeked behind the curtains and under the bed, but she couldn't find anyone. However, there definitely were signs that the bed had been used. It's an odd way to say it, but the atmosphere in the room grew a little softer. It wasn't the hard atmosphere of a place normally devoid of people, like the chapel. You could definitely tell that someone had spent the night in this room, but she could not be seen. In reality, neither Jessica nor Goda had met Beatrice. They had only been told by those who had met her that she looked like a double of the character in that portrait. So they were doubtful about what her face really looked like. However, Kennen alone had met her, and he understood what kind of being that witch was and what kind of character she had. So he knew that if they were to force their way in here searching for her, she wouldn't let things go as they planned. She must be watching us bitterly flail about in vain from somewhere, sneering at us. She's that kind of person. Because he was looking at things that way, Kennen was the first to find it. The other two were concentrating on finding the shadow of a person, so they hadn't noticed. Near a water jug on the side table, there was a single sheet of writing paper. It was accompanied by a short message and a fountain pen, which had probably been used to write it. Kennen understood the witch. The witch would definitely scoff at them, as they found the bodies, forced their way in here in rage, and were unable to find her. Scorn cannot be fulfilled unless it is communicated. So in other words, this was definitely that.
お嬢様、ここに何か書かれています。
書かれてるってなんだ？
After Jessica quickly dashed over, she violently stole the piece of paper. She probably wasn't trying to be violent. She just couldn't control her strength now.
ダメやがって！
Holy shit! I really couldn't say the F word. As soon as she read the message, Jessica went into a wild rage, crumpled the paper up and threw it. Then, she grabbed an interior stand by the bedside and violently swung it around, mercilessly hitting the walls and furniture with it. The light bulbs all shattered at once and the fragments were scattered across the room.
お嬢様、気をお沈めください。お怪我をなさいます。
離せよ！ちくしょう、ちくしょう！出てきやがれ、ベアトリーチェ！よくも父さんと母さんを！そんなに私が怖いかよ！殺してやる！殺してやる！ぶっ殺してやるから姿を現しやがれ！だから離せって言ってんだろ！くそー！
This was written on the paper.
私がぬくぬくとここであなたが飛び込んでくるのを待ちぼうけるとでも？知的な夜に粗暴なるあなたは似合わない。こんな間抜けに育てた親はどんな顔？見たよ。本当にそっくりな間抜け面。
Oh, that is fun.
今はお菓子の国でお腹いっぱい。
Oh, fuck you. It sounded like something that witch would write. It meant that she had predicted that one of the children who had lost their parents would come running in here. If she was hiding somewhere in this room, she would surely be rolling around with laughter. The witch was that kind of person. She sneered at people's misfortune, using it to stave off the boredom of 1,000 years.
これはお渡しください。お怪我をなさいますと申し上げております。
離せって言ってんだよ！くそー！くそー！
Goda grabbed the interior stand Jessica had been swinging around, because if she kept swinging it around, she might hit something and get injured. To Goda's eyes, Jessica probably looked mad with rage, burning with the flames of anger. But Kennen's eyes saw it differently. Those were probably tears of sadness hidden by rage. Therefore, at the moment the interior stand was taken from her, when Jessica started crying on the floor, scratching at the carpet almost as though she was groveling, Goda was surprised, but Kennen was not. Her way of crying by brandishing her anger had been stolen from her, So this was inevitable. Considering that she was a daughter of the Ushidame family, she was in a very shabby state. She had scratched at the carpet with her fingernails, and even her feet were scratching. Jessica cried very, very hard. Because if she didn't, her rage would start building up again and swallow her. But over and over again, she remembered that humiliating message. What kind of faces did your parents who raised you to be so stupid make? Yeah, I saw. They had a truly stupid look just like you. Now their bellies are full in the lands of sweetness. Oh shit, not an asthma attack now. As Jessica cried and screamed, she triggered an asthma attack. The servants watching over her hurriedly ran up to her and rubbed her back, but that only provoked Jessica's wrath. Jessica got up unsteadily, and as her asthma continued, she went out into the hallway.
お嬢様、お薬を至急。南條先生をお呼びします。
郷田さん、僕に任せてくれませんか?
Cannon had noticed. Goda, who was much older, probably couldn't feel the tears in Jessica's heart. Cannon, who had noticed that himself, had to support her.
カノンさん、いいのですか?
今のお嬢様には涙を流す時間も必要なのだと思います。ご両親のあんな死に方を目の当たりにしては。
そうですね。
Goda also understood. And he also knew of the vague relationship that Jessica and Cannon share. So he understood everything and left it to Cannon.
わかりました。私はローザ様のところへ戻ります。お嬢様をくれぐれもよろしくお願いしますよ。
はい、お任せを。
Cannon's voice was frail, but he nodded forcefully. After looking at his eyes, Goda also nodded forcefully. Goda was a veteran with many years behind him. He had seen a great number of people in his life, so he knew of the vigorous sparkle that could be found in the eyes of those who had self-control. He had surely seen that in Cannon's eyes. Therefore, he would leave this to Cannon. When you think about it, maybe this was the first moment that Goda had trusted Cannon and relied on him for a job. As Jessica suffered from her asthma, it seemed she was headed towards her room, leaning against the wall. Cannon chased after her wordlessly. If she had asked for her hand, he would have jumped over and supported her. But as long as Jessica didn't ask for that, he hid himself, watching over her from a distance where he could come to her rescue at any time. As Cannon remained in that spot where 10 billion people would want someone else to be when their hearts felt like they would explode from sadness, he silently watched Jessica's back. Then finally, she was crouching in front of the door to her own room. The asthma attack had stolen all of her strength, and her thoughts had gotten hazy from the lack of oxygen so that she could no longer stand up. But right now, Jessica wasn't thinking that she wanted someone to lend a hand, because she still hadn't been able to overcome the flames of anger. Because even if someone had offered her a hand with good intentions, right now Jessica would start wanting to tear it off. And she understood how unreasonable that would be. Until she could overcome the flames of her anger, she definitely wouldn't ask for help. Probably, Jessica no longer had the willpower to call for help. But Cannon heard it. He definitely heard it. Cannon definitely heard the voiceless call for help, which was shared by those who across the world who are grieving, and which cannot be heard by anyone, even though they scream and scream. Cannon softly knelt by Jessica's side and wordlessly offered her a shoulder. Even though Jessica kept coughing painfully, she accepted it, opened the lock to her room, and entered.
こちらへ。今、お薬をご用意します。
Jessica had often said that when her asthma got serious enough, it would hurt so bad that it felt like she would vomit her whole stomach. Her face was pale, and her gaze wavered. And yet, the coughing continued. Even so, her sadness was probably even stronger. After having her kneel by the bed, Cannon took a bronchodilator, from a cute basket on a side table by the bed and handed it to her. Jessica sometimes forgot to walk around with her medicine. When it seemed that this was the case, Cannon would take notice and secretly carry around the inhaler from the first aid kit in the servant room. But he hadn't done so today. He scolded himself, as though wondering how he could call himself furniture after failing to bring it with him on a day like this. Then he remembered the day when he said that, and somehow betrayed Jessica's feelings, which jarred Cannon's heart. But he thought that compared to Jessica's sadness now, that would be a very indiscreet emotion, and he suppressed it to the depths of his heart. When she inhaled her medicine, Jessica's wild breathing finally calmed down bit by bit, and she was finally able to regain her composure. But the strength and willpower she had lost wouldn't allow her to rise up from the bed.
大丈夫ですか、お嬢様。
私は大丈夫だぜ。父さんと母さんは、私はもうちょっとなきゃ大丈夫だぜ。
Cannon regretted misspeaking. He had said, "Are you all right?" to her. Was he really unable to notice the pain in her heart? Therefore, he was furniture after all. Therefore, he couldn't become human.
廊下におります。ご用がありましたら、すぐにお呼びください。
Cannon understood that she still needed some time to cry alone. He told her to call him at any time, bowed, and tried to leave the room.
何か。
Jessica had spoken as though she wanted him to stop, so Cannon had stopped. If she asks it, I'll do anything to help her. If it could heal the pain in her heart, right now, I would even become a cane or a chair. If by doing that, I can repair the pain in her heart I gave her that day. For a while, Jessica stared into Cannon's eyes, as though she couldn't put into words her reason for stopping him. For a while, neither spoke. Jessica broke that silence with a small voice.
なんでもないぜ。しばらく一人になりたいって。おさんおばさん。
一人にはしません。あなたを僕は一人にしない。だから廊下にいます。いつでも呼んでください。
For just an instant, it looked like some kind of hope flew to Jessica's eyes. But it was very faint, and disappeared like the first snow does on the surface of a river.
ありがとな。しばらくだけ。一人で。
はい。失礼します。
Cannon bowed once again and closed the door. He should have said something to give her some courage, but for some reason it felt like that would actually hurt her. Why? He didn't know. Surely that was because he was furniture. So even now he couldn't grasp human sadness. As Cannon repeatedly questioned himself, he walked down the corridor. He felt like the window at the end was coolly calling to him.
僕はやっぱり家具でしかないのか。
It was still pouring outside, a dark, gray world. Even on days like this, Shannon would surely see the ocean and know it was blue. But to my eyes, even if it cleared up, I would only see gray. As long as I cannot understand the blue of the ocean, I am nothing but furniture imitating a person.
本当に女心のわからぬやつよ。
Fucking Christ!
ああいう時は黙ってそばにいるのが正解だ。だからゆえに貴様は家具なのよ。
Damn it.
貴様
There shouldn't have been any trace of anyone in this corridor. It had been empty and cold, but those scoffing words approached Cannon from behind. When he turned around, he saw that witch. That witch who hadn't shown herself when Jessica had searched for her with a rage bordering on madness, who had left that sneering letter to toy with Jessica.
女の傷つけ方は3つある。特別にわらわが教えてやろう。一つは刃物で傷つける。一つは心で傷つける。そして最後が一番難しく、一番効果的に傷つけられる。なのに意識せずして傷つけられる。わかるか？
わかるわけもないし、知りたくもない。
期待を裏切る。女ほど夢見がちな生き物はいない。勝手に夢を見、勝手に傷つく。お前のような距離の男が一番女を傷つける。わかるまいな。どれほどジェシカを傷つけてきたか、全く考えが及んでいまい。家具だから。
Oh, fuck you, Beatrice.
お前のたわごとに付き合う気は毛頭ない。僕を嘲笑うためだけに姿を現したというのか。
うぬぼれるな家具。貴様ごとき嘲笑うにも足りぬわ。しかしそなたも一人ではそれに値しなくても二人揃えば十分に足りる。若々しき男女の悲運を笑う喜びは何度繰り返しても飽きぬのでな。
Don't you fucking dare.
なんだと。まさか貴様、お嬢様を。
第二の番の生贄に寄り添う二人が必要なのでな。お前たち二人は実に都合がよい。
待て、勘違いするな。僕はお嬢様とそういう関係じゃない。第二の番の生贄にはならない。
だからお前はジェシカを傷つける。だからお前は人間になれぬ。ならばよいだろう。貴様がジェシカを思い人と認めるならばそれを受け入れてもよい。だがジェシカは殺す。
なぜ？
このバカが決まっておろうが。殺したらそなたが歪めるだろうその表情が楽しいからの他に何の理由が必要なのか。
You horrible bitch!
儀式に従いわらわは気まぐれに13人を生贄とする。だがそれ以上殺してはならないとの決まりはない。わらわが楽しければ幾人でも殺す。だから殺す。わらわを思いっきり笑わせてみせろよ。家具カノン。
At that time, Cannon definitely heard Jessica scream. In the instant he looked down the corridor, the witch, who had been making a perfectly ordinary face until a second ago, had disappeared. Right now it was just him, standing alone in the corridor. And the person he wanted to protect was asking for help and was right over there. It was obvious what he should do. It wasn't logical, it was an electric reaction. Without a trace of hesitation or idle thoughts, the person he wanted to protect was there and asking for help. Therefore, in that moment, he genuinely felt what he wanted he wanted to be with the person who was there with her. When he flew into Jessica's room, his eyes lashed onto a bizarre scene. The room was a fantastical world where a blizzard of gold-colored specks danced, almost as though gold leaf had been scattered inside a snow globe. No, that's not it. I've seen this spectacle before. This isn't gold leaf. It's countless gold butterflies, Beatrice's minions. Jessica was surrounded by countless butterflies and was waving her hands around, trying frantically to swat them.
お嬢様
Cannon rushed towards Jessica and violently brushed the group of butterflies away. The butterflies, which were both beautiful and filthy, surrounded Jessica's face, trying to crawl in through her mouth and nose. Jessica gagged violently, almost as though the butterflies were triggering her asthma attack, sneering at her. But when Cannon ran towards Jessica as she choked, the butterflies stopped attacking her, and this time they began to elegantly dance a rondo around the two.
大丈夫僕の目の黒いうちはあなたに誰の指一本触れさせたりするものか出てこいベアトリーチェこれで満足か
As he guarded Jessica, who was in pain and using her inhaler, Cannon yelled into the empty air. When he did, the empty air definitely laughed back, satisfied. What the? Then she showed herself. It wasn't in response to Cannon's demand. It was obviously because appearing and sneering humiliating them even more, it was more fun.
これで全ては筋書き通りよ今やそなたは相乗の恋よないや二人が揃ったのだから鴨とネギと呼ぶべきか
ベアトリーチェ
お下がりくださいお嬢様僕が守る
姫に騎士が揃わば魔女が現れるのは必然よどれ金蔵の家具がどの程度の力を持つか見せてもらおうではないか
She snapped her fingers and there was a piercing sound. When she did, a blizzard of gold butterflies started up and they began to form a small mountain as they whirled around in a circle. Just like how a cold, wintry wind swirls and creates a mountain of leaves. What the hell? Okay, that's... I see a hand. Looks like it's wearing... It's either extremely pale or it's wearing a glove. That looks like... That looks very similar to... Is that a servant suit? From that mound of gold, a hand sprouted, and it appeared, as though a resident of the world below was crawling out. Jessica couldn't comprehend what she was seeing right now, and her mouth kept flapping open and closed. It was the bite of wisdom, which came from trying to understand something so incomprehensible. Holy shit! Excuse me? That is clearly not human. Well, if it's one thing, it kind of reminds me of Baphomet from, Shin Megami Tensei. Holy shit, he's ripped, I just realized that. That thing crawling up was probably an attendant serving the witch. It appeared to be wearing a uniform following the pattern of those who serve. But its face was different. It was strange looking. It was covered with pitch black hair, breathed rotten breath, and its eyes were filled with the same strange subterranean glow as lava. And, as a symbol that it was not human, it had two horns. It was the figure of a goat-faced attendant who served the witch. Jessica could no longer decide what to say. All this happening in front of her couldn't be explained with common sense, and she couldn't do anything except open and close her mouth. Jessica hadn't noticed. This island had already been cut off from the rules of this world, but even so, she couldn't understand. This goat attendant was the witch's familiar, and it was after her life. And it seemed that the witch had already ordered that. And she faced Cannon with an expectant gaze. She faced him with a provocative gaze filled with expectation, as though asking him how he planned to protect this maiden. The attendant had looked especially like a beast when it had been crawling up, but in its composure, you could see that it had more than enough dignity to be worthy of serving the Golden Witch. And you could tell that it was overflowing with the joy of furniture wanting to meet its master's expectations.
見せてもらおうではないか 金蔵の家具の力を。今度は間違えるの？
Don't mess up this time.
家具であることを忘れるな。この後に及んで人間のふりを続けるのなら、死ぬのはお前だけでは済まぬぞ。
The goat attendant made a gesture as though bowing silently. Was that in response to its master? Or was it offered to Cannon, who opposed it? Then, on the attendant's hand, a blade of wicked malice appeared. Oh! What the fuck is that?
なんだよ、
Fucking hell! Does he have a lightsaber hand? What the? Jessica had been unable to understand what was happening before her eyes for a while now. All she understood was that this thing was being waved around to threaten her own life. And right now, that was enough. Cannon spoke quietly to Jessica, who was hiding behind his back.
お嬢様、壁に下がっていてください。背中は決して壁から離さないように。
姫君はおとなしく騎士殿の背中に隠れているがいい。自らの命を男に守らせる醍醐味でもさあカノン、お前の刃を見せてみよ。
What? What's going on? What?! Fuck? Now he has. Oh god, I just got the biggest headache suddenly. What the fuck is. Okay, now he has an arm blade.
美しい。金蔵は家具を生み出すことに関してだけはわらわの足元に及ぶやもしれぬ。
こんなものバラの手入れにも使えない。
カノン君、それは
見せたくなかった。
よくぞ抜いたぞ。思いを寄せる女の前で己が人間以下の存在であることを晒した気分はどんなものよ。
黙れ。
憤怒で己を焦がしているくせになるほど。真に熱き炎は青く静かだという。今のそなたがそうだというのか。
僕の力でお前は月石つぶてを投げたとて月を砕くことなどできたが、お前は権限するために水面にその姿を映す。水面に石つぶてを投じれば一時月、しかし月を砕くことなど至らない。だから僕はこの命尽きるまでお前の映る水面を叩き続けてやる。
気に入ったぞカノン。始めろカグども。
Holy shit!
ほう、美しい奇跡だ。
Lucas. The witch's words of admiration broke the silence, and for just an instant broke Jessica's paralysis. Hold on a second. Hold on! A locus is basically a curved line or surface. The Japanese word used here can also mean a trace or a track, and is pronounced the same as a miracle. What the? We're gonna read it out. Welcome, Maria. Happy Halloween. Didn't I tell you that her stomach would be filled with candy? All stomachs are filled with sweet dreams. What's so filthy about the inside of a stomach? This is why we want to be as sweet and innocent as candy. And so I give you the land of dreams. Happy Halloween.
Koi, 魔女の家具め、元来た地獄へ叩き落としてやる。
Come on, Cannon. Oh my god, I would love to see this freaking played out. Holy shit. A strand of red remained on Cannon's cheek. The witch saw this and grinned broadly.
勘が戻らぬことを言い訳につぶやいてもよいぞ。
カノン君、しっかり。
大丈夫、僕はまだ死なない。
What the hell? Oh god. Oh god! The locust, drawn by the goat's attendant's blade, drew a large arc in empty space. Cannon wasn't there. He was behind it.
先に帰りて。主の帰りを待つがいい。行け。
Holy shit! If this battle of drawing sparkling loci was chess, then Cannon coming from behind was check. And press, and press, and press, and press. Use 7 moves and make it mate! Had the goat attendant even been given the ability to go into death throes? As its knees buckled and it fell over, it broke into a bunch of gold butterflies with a pop. So there was no sound of it hitting the ground. Even the person who couldn't understand this battle definitely at least realized that Cannon had been magnificent.
ハンドメイドには勝てぬか。そこまで見下げたものではないらしい。
次はお前だ。ベアトリーチェー!
In the instant that Cannon's blade sliced diagonally through the witch's form like a knife through butter, she turned gold and burst. She scattered into several thousand gold butterflies, and for just an instant the room was filled with the color of twilight. It was just as Cannon himself had said. Even slicing Beatrice was just the same as slicing the surface of the water where the moon was reflected. The witch's form was there with an ordinary expression on her face, as though she'd been there the whole time, behind Cannon.
十分に面白い見せ物であったぞ。それに免じ見逃してやろうかと思ったが。
Oh god.
今の無礼で気が変わった。
嘘をつくな。お前にお嬢様を殺させはしない。たとえそれが無理でも僕より先に殺させはしない。
お前にはそれすらできぬわ。喋るな家具が。無口であれ家具が。身の程を知れ家具が。
カノン君は家具なんかじゃない。
ほう、なぜそう言えるのか。
理由なんかいらない。カノン君はカノン君だよ。本当の名前は別にあるけれど、それでも名前は家具じゃない。カノン君にはカノン君の生き方がある。それはとても高潔なもので、自らが決めるもの。家具だから意見しちゃいけないとか、家具だから自分の人生を持っちゃいけないとか、そんなのないよ。
お嬢様、あいつを挑発してはいけません。
はっきり言っておくぜ。カノン君は家具じゃない。人間だよ。どうして？カノン君は自分の意志で私を助けに駆けつけてくれた。そして恐ろしい魔女であるあんたの前に立ちはだかってくれた。私を見捨てることなんていくらでもできただろうに、そうしなかった。自己犠牲は 人間だけが持つ高潔な精神だ。だからカノン君は人間なんだ。だから訂正しろ。カノン君をカグダなんて呼ぶな、二度と。
お嬢様。
語るな人間が。とっとと終わらせよう。何しろまだまだ第二の番。互いの尊厳を認め合う寄り添いし二人を今こそ生贄に捧げよ。さあさあおいでなさい。罪を許しなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。色欲。
Oh shit. The witch summoned her own furniture with a mixture of laughter and anger on her face.
色欲のアスモデウス。
Who the? Excuse me? Asmodeus? Wasn't expecting Asmodeus, the demon of lust, to be, you know, that. Pretty sure Asmodeus has been depicted pretty differently. Okay.
ここに。
茶番は飽きた。第二の番を速やかに遂行せよ。わらわに瞬きを三つも許すな。
Okay, so wait a minute. Hold on a sec. Hold on! The first chapter, they were literally just daggers. Now, wait, now they're my head hurts. My head hurts.
また妙なのが出やがったぜ。
It took Canon less than an instant to understand. That goat face from a second ago had been nothing more than a pawn to the witch. However, there was a remarkable difference to this value of this piece, or of this furniture that had been newly summoned.
素敵な獲物に恵まれるなんて、なんて幸運なのかしら。怯えてる？かわいい。
来い。魔女の家具。お前には殺されない。
私の姿を追うこともできないノロマのくせに生きがって。行くわよ。ねえねえ、どこがいい？どこを貫いてほしい？お答えなさいよ、かわいい子。あなたの好きなところを思い切り貫いてあげる。さあさあ、お答えなさいよ、かわいい子。
僕を可愛いと言うな。
行くわよ、ノルマ。さあ追ってごらん、その節穴で。
お嬢様。
No. Please, no.
目では追えなかったけどよ。読みは当てたぜ。ざまあ、見やがれ。
Cannon's back had been the target, but Jessica had predicted it. She had predicted that the witch's target would be the complete opposite of fair and honest, his back. But she had no way to block it. She had no intention of sacrificing herself. She had thought that there was no other way than this to protect Cannon's back, so she could do nothing but block it with her own back. The furniture of the witch, which had changed its form into a demon's stake, was stuck deep into Jessica's back. It was an obviously fatal wound that reached as far as her lungs. When she saw this, the witch let out a loud, evil laugh, because it had hit where the witch had predicted. Everything was as the witch had predicted.
どうしたカノン。ジェシカお嬢様はお前より先には殺されなかったんじゃないのか。そうそう、それそれ、その顔よ。お前のその顔が見たかった。
God damn it, no.
楽しんだ、実に十分。もうよい、死ね死ね、笑わせろ。さあさあおいでなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。フンド。
Another one?
フンドのサタン。
ここに。
Hey, Satan.
その獲物はお前のものだ。今すぐ食らってこやつの舞台に幕を下ろしてやれ。人ならば交番とも言おうが、家具のお前の場合は大道具係が舞台裏に運び出すといったところか。
僕はもう家具じゃない。そしてそれを二度と疑わない。
なーに？あんたまた私に殺されちゃうの？あんたの胸温かくて本当に貫くと気持ちがいいのよ。あなたの温かい胸の中で熱い熱い血潮で私を
There was no way to block it. The sound of a woodpecker filled the entire room, and before he could blink, it was already right in the center of his chest. When you take a piece in chess, according to the rules, it's impossible for your opponent's piece to defend. So this was an obvious result, following the rules. Cannon landed on his knees, and he apologized. Not to the witch, and not to Milady. He apologized to Jessica.
ごめん。守りきれなかった。
気にしないで。よかった。
Cannon finally fell over. He landed next to Jessica, and the two lay there like the constellation Gemini.
家具じゃないよ。
はい。それに遅すぎた。
君の本当の泣き
僕の本当。
Oh God. In his last moments, Cannon wanted to tell her his real name. But Jessica had already fallen into a sleep from which she would never wake. So Cannon's real name, which he had protected until today, in the end, he couldn't tell it to Jessica.
僕、人間になれ。
Those were the last words Cannon left behind.
笑わせるな家具が。100年を経ようと家具は家具よ。捨てるときに家具のために墓穴を掘るバカがどこにいる？家具は叩き割って薪にして後には灰しか残らぬわ。そういうことよ。家具に刻める墓碑などない。貴様は死ねばこれ以上の屈辱を受けることがないと信じてるようだが、死者を恥ずかしめるというのがどういうものか。
After taking a puff from her pipe, the witch breathed the smoke at Cannon's corpse. When she did, Cannon's corpse softly floated into the air and disappeared as though it had been eaten by a mouth in empty space. The witch played dirty until the very end. The corpses of the two who had been able to understand each other in the end were not even permitted to be close to each other. If someone had been watching, they would probably be mourned that this was indeed a disgrace to the dead. However, Beatrice was much crueler. That would become immediately apparent.
そうか。
Well, I guess that's my punishment for going too further. The deaths of the parents didn't bother me that much, just the method that they were killed. But that moment right there. It's literally neat. It's 1,000 times worse than what happened with Mikan and Danganronpa. It's 1,000,000 times worse. This is what I get for getting so involved in the characters and Canon was able to fight back that demon that was summoned with a very similar power that the demon used. How that is, I do not know. But in the end, they both still. Hasn't even updated about them being dead. I'm gonna go ahead and leave this episode here. And I'm just gonna go get myself a nice warm cup of tea. And let myself calm down a bit. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all